Good morning, this is Kale. Welcome to my channel, Celestial Realms. Today I'm going to be doing an informal overview / review on my favorite fantasy book series. It's called the Sun Sword series. It's by Michelle West. And I've got my notes here. I will be reading from them, so I won't always be staring in the camera. The dogs are asleep and the AC just went off. It's still like 90 degrees here in Texas, so it may go back on again, so just excuse that. And hopefully the music's at the right audio level and everything. So let's go ahead and get started because I'm excited about this. I really do love these books. So let's see, where do I start? Because look at all these books. There are a lot. Mostly today I'll be focusing on the actual Sun Sword little subset of all these books, but they're all kind of like interrelated with each other, all telling kind of like the same story. So as I mentioned, the author is Michelle West. She also writes as Michelle Sagara, and she's Canadian. You can check out her website. It's michellesagara.com. And these particular books here in this series, because I know she writes some other series, they were published between 1997 and 2004, the actual Sun Sword series. So they are kind of hefty books. What I'm probably going to do is kind of go over the themes that are in the books, talk about the plot a bit, and you can see my rating there, 5 out of 5. It's wonderful. I love them. I'll talk about some pros and cons, and then just some kind of general thoughts. So what I have my notes here. So let's see, let's start off with the themes. So we've got the universal good versus evil going on. Then we've got kind of having power versus not having power. Then we've got choices and the consequences of your choices. We've got some hero's journey going on in there, and we've got some redemption arcs, and kind of like the male-female parts that are within these cultures that make up this world. Those are the main themes. So let's go over the plot. So there are 3 major factions, so to speak. You've got an empire in the north, you've got an empire in the south, and then in the far north you have the baddies. That's where they are. And so his name is the Lord of Night. His name is Alasakar. He's up in the north. So in the south you have the Dominion of Anagar, and they are very, they are very traditional, ruled by men. Women don't really have any external political power, but they have cultural power and kind of power in the background. Like, it's not super visible, but it's there, and the men know it. And the women know it, but it's a very traditional type of society. They're very warlike, they're tribal, their clans are blood related, so it's very familiar, and they are ruled by a lord and lady deity kind of couple, and the lady's at night and the lord is during the day. And then in the north, you've got the Empire of Esalion, and they are ruled by dual god-born kings, and they're brothers. But they're half human, they're half god. It's very highly civilized. There's magic, there's mages, bards. There's 10 houses. They hold political power within the empire, but they are not blood-related like they are in the south. They are more, you pledge yourself to the house, or you get chosen by the house. Would you like to be part of us? And so that's like one big cultural difference between the two empires, that difference between the blood related clan and the kind of politically affiliated house. It's much more egalitarian between the men and women, and so as you can see already, there's already differences between the two. Then up in the far north is where Alasakar lives, and their culture, their society, well, first of all, they're like super evil. They're bad. And he wants to just kind of take over the world and re-manifest himself on the physical plane, because he's kind of in a place kind of called the Hells. And then he's got his own kind of first council, his little group of like leaders, and they're like major demons. And then beneath them are all the other kind of little crappy demons. They don't hold a lot of power, but they're evil. So if you look here, you've got this light versus dark. You've got kings, you've got gods, bards, seers, magic, and that's mostly up in the north. There's a little bit of magic in the south, but they're like a particular small subset of the society. In the north, you've got this dark god, you've got demons. They're interested in war, chaos. They live in the hells, and they're not, what's the word? They don't blend in with anything in the current world. They're like antithetical to it. They are big books, so let's talk about some little like pros and cons. So anyways, well, before I go do that, let me just go back over like a quick plot point. These three empires, groups of people, are at war with each other. There's a legend that a son from Anagar, from a particular clan, can wield the sun sword, and he will be the one to defeat the Lord of Night. Now, the Dominion wants to go to war with the Empire of Esselion, so that's kind of where it sort of starts off. And the power struggles and how these people interact with each other. So there are other books in this series other than the Sun Sword. So let me go ahead and I'll show you the timeline. I'll go ahead and zoom into this, and I'll show you what it's like. So you can read these by the date that they were published, or you can read them kind of in this order here, where I've got like the House War Part 1 are these three books: The Hidden City, City of Night, and House Name. Then you can jump into the Sacred Hunt duology, which are shorter stories, but important in their own right, but there's two of those that go together. And then you can get into the actual Sun Sword series, which is 6 books. You've got The Broken Crown, The Uncrowned King, The Shining Court, Sea of Sorrows, The Riven Shield, and The Sun Sword. Then after you're done with those, you would go ahead and finish the House War Part 2, which is Skirmish, Battle, Oracle, Firstborn, and War. So I kind of did it how they were published, pretty much. But either way, it works okay. Now, I do have a web wiki if you're looking for further information on the books that I am working on. It's a work in progress. It's over on my website, celestialrealms.com. You can come up here on the menu bar and it says Sun Sword Wiki, and it'll bring you here. And I'm starting to add the information here. You can find that timeline that I put together. And I'm doing an overview, and then you've got here the Sacred Hunt, the Sun Sword, House War, and then she also wrote some novellas, which are really short stories about particular characters or points of history. I've also put together a list of characters, and I'm adding to that as I go through the books. I just did a reread of the entire Sun Sword series, and now I'm going to start the House War, and I will be adding names as more characters come up. But as you can see, it's a very complex world, and there are a lot of characters. So if you're into those kind of books, long series, complicated world, but well defined, and lots of characters, this is right like down your alley. And the characters are wonderful. So let me go back over here. So I wanted to show you so you can kind of get an idea how much I love these books. So this is my copy of The Broken Crown. So as you can see, it's like the cover's torn, the back is torn, over this way, back is torn. It's a big book, and this is just the first book. So let me go ahead, and so the Sun Sword, which is the 6th book, the last book in the Sun Sword series, I read that so many times the book literally fell apart. I just recently purchased the newest edition, which is this one here. So here you can see Curiel and Valaden on the front. And again, this is a big book. It's about almost 1,000 pages, I believe. Excellent. So, if you like big books, it's just right down your alley. So let me go ahead and check my notes here. Okay, so we went over the plot. So let's go over some pros and cons about these books. Okay, so the pros. Epic fantasy, big books, detailed cultures, detailed world, well-written characters, in-depth. They're not just shallow. They're not, NPCs. You get to know most of them fairly well. Gods, demons, there's immortals, there's some legendary creatures, there's heroes and magic, there's political schemes, there's hidden agendas, rivalries, plot twists and turns. She's a very good writer. The way that she puts her words together are quite intense and rather unique to her. There's a few other fantasy writers that may kind of be similar, maybe Guy Gavriel Kay, Stephen Donaldson with his Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, that kind of intense, formal sort of writing, formal prose for an epic fantasy book. It's not written for like a young adult. They would not understand these books. They're too in-depth and too complex. They would be lost. So there's lots of layers to the story. Now, it does, let's go to some cons. It's not a quick read, so you will be reading for a while. But if you like that, it's cool. There are some sentences where she gets a little either wordy or it's like so succinct and I say short, where you're kind of like, well, what is she referring to? What is she talking about? And you might have to read that over again a couple of times to get where she's coming from. But once you kind of get used to her style, you get to not have that happen as often. So it's a little bit of a slow start. You may be confused at the very beginning of The Broken Crown. And I remember reading it and kind of going, what's going on here? It wasn't that I didn't like it. I was just a little confused, which kind of typically happens in long fantasy series because there's so much to tell and it's going to take a while to really get into it. There are lots of switching character perspectives from chapter to chapter. That might bother some people. It doesn't bother me at all. I just, go from one to the other. It's fine. And so it can be a bit of a slog and, take you a while to read them all. But once you really get into it, if you do end up liking it, once you get into it, you'll just fly through it. I've read these books over 10 times. Easy, if not more, because I just like them so much. So I've gone ahead and given it a rating of 5 out of 5 stars because, of course, it's my favorite fantasy series. There's, some characters that I really, really love. Joel Marquez is awesome. The main hero character, Valaden Kai de Leon, he's really, really neat. Kiriel is so complex. She's, half god, half human. These kind of things these interactions between them. Diora, she's like the most beautiful woman in the Southern Empire, but her personality and her will and her strength are just become legendary. Those kind of things where like you really come to love these characters and you know who they are and how they would react. Literally, if they walked into the room right now, I would be like, hi, how are you doing? Because I would feel so, familiar with them. They're like my friends. Now, one of the things I will say about these is that I don't recommend getting drawn into any kind of like modern thinking, modern thinking. The women in these books are powerful. Okay, they are undeniably powerful, and some of them more than others. But they're not infallible. They do make mistakes. They do have to live with the consequences of their choices. And the same is true of the men. There are some powerful men, very much so, but they are not infallible, and they also have to deal with the consequences of their choices. So this isn't some namby-pamby, goody-two-shoe, women all-powerful, hate men type of series. It is not like that at all. And I really like that about it, because both men and women are given their own agency based on the plot. And it works perfectly. I did want to mention that. So it's not like Lord of the Rings, so don't think it's like that. There's no dwarves, you know. There aren't really any elves type. There's maybe elven type people, but there are no elves. So it's not like that kind of style. It's not like the Belgariad, which is very lighthearted fantasy. It's not like the Wheel of Time. It may be close to Wheel of Time, but the way it's written, it's just a different style, and it's very unique unto itself in fantasy literature. So I would go ahead and recommend getting started. I would start with The Broken Crown. So on the front of The Broken Crown, you see who I was talking about earlier. Her name is Diora. She's the flower of the Dominion. I mean, some of these sentences that Michelle West writes are just jaw-dropping, the way that she puts her words together and the way that these characters interact with each other. You're literally like turning the page trying to find out what happens next, and sometimes you're like, what just happened? Are you kidding me? Seriously? Wow, that's cool, you know. And you're like reading the books doing that the entire time. There's very little downtime where it's more, you know, expository, like descriptive type thing. There is some of that because, of course, she does have to describe her world, so you understand the place where the story is happening, and the world is very influential. It's almost its own character within the story. I don't want to give away any spoilers, so I won't talk about how that works. So, go ahead and get started with The Broken Crown. If you really want to go to like the beginning, you could start Houseward, but I don't recommend it because you might be like utterly confused. And Broken Crown is where I started, and it works. The artwork on the covers of the books are awesome. Really, really cool. More so on the Sunsword series than on the Houseward series. But it's all fabulous art, and they really captured these characters that are on those covers. Like Villaden is on the Uncrowned King. Margaret is on the Shining Cord. I think that's Elena. And what's his name? I don't know. I might be wrong. That might not be her brother or her cousin. And then you've got Calandras and Celeriant on the Riven Shield, and of course Curiel. Curiel's amazing. Curiel and Villaden on the Sunsword, and then of course in the Hidden City you see Jewel. A lot of the House War revolves around Jewel Marquez, around her character. These other characters from the Sunsword series are in House War, in the House War books, but mostly it's about Jewel Marquez and her background, her history, and her present, which is kind of with the Sunsword, and then kind of like past that. So I recommend reading them. If you have any questions about the books, just go ahead and leave me a comment. I will check comments on the video once I get it uploaded. Follow the channel, subscribe, turn on the little notifications so you'll know when I do my next video. I am going to continue doing reviews on the individual books. So the next one will be The Broken Crown, and get into more of the storyline, more details about the story, more details about the characters. When I make those videos, I will try and notate where I'm going to do any major like plot spoilers. I'll try not to do too many, but I do want to talk about the books. I would love to have people to talk about these books with, because I feel like I'm in like a little isolated bubble, because I don't think these books are well known in fantasy world. I know that it's mentioned in Goodreads. There's people, talking about it in Goodreads, but I don't really go to that site for that. So go ahead and leave a comment and let me know what you think. Let me know if you're interested in picking up the books and reading them. And then we can just, have a conversation about them, chit-chat about them, maybe do some live streams about them. That would be fun. That'd be pretty cool. So anyways, I am done. I love these books, and I hope that you learn to love them too. And have a great day wherever you may be. I am going to check on my little puppy who was kind of sick to her stomach right before I started recording. So who knows what she ate, because we were outside earlier. So thanks for stopping by. Have a sparkly day, and I will see you next time.